Oh,
She's here in spirit.
there you go. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna call the Wood Village Council meeting, May 12th to order. Could I get one of our counselors to read the land acknowledgement?
I can do that. Wood Village Land Acknowledgement Statement. The Chinookan peoples known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these peoples included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands.
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today, before we continue, last week we were made aware of one of our past council members who had passed away. So we're just going to take a moment of silence and then read a dedicated proclamation as he was a well-known individual in the public works career. Thank you. Now I will read the National Public Works Appreciation Week proclamation, week May 17th to the 23rd, 2026. Whereas public works professional focus on infrastructure, facilities, and service that are a vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities, to public health, high quality of life, and a well-being of people of Wood Village. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and service could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and at the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste system, public buildings, and other structural and facilities essentials for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens, civic leaders, and children in Wood Village to gain knowledge and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective community. And whereas the year 2026 marks the 66th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. And whereas former city councilor Mark Clark was a champion of public works, spending most of his career in the public works industry, and was strong advocate in promoting the ideal work and investments needed to create and maintain quality infrastructure. Now, therefore, I, Jairo Rios Campos, the mayor of Wood Village, hereby designate the week of May 17th through 23rd, 2026 as National Public Works Week and dedicate it in Mark's honor. I urge all citizens to join representatives of the American Public Works Associations and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonial designed to pay tribute to our public works professional, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the sustainable contributions they make to protect our nation's health, safety, and advancement of quality of life. We'll go ahead and move on to citizen comments on non-agenda items.
No comments relayed in, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Now we'll go ahead and move to our public safety report.
Right, good evening. So we talking about April kind of stats. So in April, there were 12 crashes, reported crashes, 4 of which included hit and runs. All very minor, no injuries reported, kind of in our repeat problem areas on 238, Walmart parking lot, that kind of stuff. So nothing really new there. Overall, there were 283 total calls in April, and 157 of those were self-initiated. There was one call of note, April 3rd. It wasn't actually on the call log because it got coded as a priority 3. But there was a reported shooting at the Wood Village Mobile Home Park. Nobody was injured, but gunfire did strike one of the houses there. Deputies were able to identify a suspect who had fled, and a short time later, East Metro SWAT actually went and did an operation and arrested him at his house. So that is taken care of basically in the DA's hands now. And then other thing, there's a planned mission on May 22nd, primarily for traffic safety stuff. We'll have a couple extra deputies in town, just looking for problem traffic areas and livability issues. So if you have any things of note that you would like them to focus on, let me know.
What date was that?
May 22nd.
27th,
Second.
May 2nd. Thank you.
They're focusing on trouble areas in our,
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of trouble areas, but just kind of high traffic areas, areas where there's crashes, traffic complaints, that kind of thing. So probably 238, 242, Gleason, that kind of, those areas, I think where we probably
I'll
get
send
the
you a
most
list.
traffic complaints. Yeah,
and just kind of enforcing like
just
traffic, like.
everything. Yeah, any violations they see. It's just going to be a couple extra deputies, so they'll be on overtime and just focus solely on traffic, and they don't need to worry about calls and things like that. So they can just kind of do their own thing and find issues. Very proactive. Try to be proactive.
Seems like the summer days are here and lots of
Everyone's in.
traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
7, 8 o'clock in the evening, flying, I mean, up and down with
Yeah.
Belgrade and Wood Village
Yeah.
Boulevard, and I hear it on Halsey, and anyway, but
Reaching, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, good to hear. Catch a bunch of them.
And then we'll get a report on the next one to see what.
yeah. I'll have stats for in June, I guess, for the next.
Chief, I did have a question on the report. The assaults, while they're not up, you know how the report tags it red,
Yeah.
and I probably wouldn't have noticed it if it didn't tag it red. It's 8 this particular month, and it's been 8 or 12 even in some years past.
Right.
But over the last 4 months, that's up. My question is an assault, would that be could a family dispute be considered an assault, or are these assaults in outside the family, it wouldn't be considered as a family dispute, but are these, as I was saying, stranger to stranger,
No, they're almost all of them were domestic.
domestic? Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes with hot weather, I mean, just different things, different holidays, you can see an uptick. It just depends. Yeah. Usually alcohol plays a factor. So, but I think I did notice that there were 8 compared to, I think, one the month before
Yeah.
or something like that. So, but yeah, it looked like, looking at the call log, they were all kind of disturbance calls, and then they were, it looked like they were all at residences.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
known, or some of them were like somebody showed up at the house, or, you know, a strange family member showing up at the
Yeah.
house, things like that. So.
Thank you. And now you explained the
Yeah.
classification of it too, because if it's the domestic, that's a little bit different than if 8 assaults on the streets, or in the stores or in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think there was one, I think it made it onto Wood Village, but I was told it was in Fairview, but I don't know if the guy just came to Wood Village from Fairview, but where it initially happened, it was a guy that had a crossbow and had threatened people with the crossbow. But he was still there when deputies got there and they took him into custody. So that may have also been coded as an assault type call because the threat portion of it. So it's not just an assault. It can be a, you know, threats of violence, things like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You mentioned the gunshot in the Wood Village area. Was, you know, was he detained in Wood Village or outside of the city limits?
So I believe in Wood Village, in that same mobile home
On the
park.
same mobile home?
Yeah.
And as you know, we're all kind of monitoring and seeing the decrease in the county budget for the sheriff's office. Like, yeah, is the sheriff, you know, thinking of proactive either missions or programs to try to you know, defer some of these things that happen? As we know, the summer months, a lot of uptick in certain crimes, and is there any
Yeah.
talks about certain stuff like that?
So, I mean, really with the budget, the good thing is we're not actually losing any. There's not gonna be any layoffs, or we're not losing. They're kind of just moving them around for certain things that are cut. So you won't see any kind of change in service or missions. We still try to do at least a mission every 2 months in Wood Village, to where it's more of a proactive, but then we also get grants for things like DUIs and other traffic things. We're focusing on seatbelts, distracted driving, so like cell phone tickets, things like that. So there really isn't going to be any change in services. We're actually pretty fortunate for the sheriff's office budget did not really see the cuts that other county agencies did. They were relatively minor for overall, but obviously things that are important still, but there's not really much to cut because they've gotten rid of so much over the last, 20 years. So.
Yeah.
I think on that note, and maybe for next month, because we know that the Hope team is being reallocated, we'll call it. And I think there a lot of reasons for that, and a lot of assurances that services will still be provided. I'm wondering if maybe at the next meeting we can talk a little bit more about what we in the community can expect with that change, and maybe that's involving have Chief Hemsworth or Captain Chubinashu or even Sergeant Kirkman to talk about that transition and the plans moving forward, just so there is a bit more comfort from a council level, staff level, and community level of yes, Hope Team's going away and the service isn't necessarily going away, so it's going to look a little different.
Yeah. And I think the Hope Team has been great, and I mean I've heard nothing always good feedback with the Hope Team. It's the funding for homeless services is really lies with the Homeless Service Division, which is funded separately. So typically, this shouldn't necessarily be a police matter for treating homelessness, right? So, a deputy showing up isn't always the best thing for somebody experiencing homelessness. So I think hopefully with that going away, there will be other resources that are focused out here in East County with, things like that. I know that it sounds like Gresham maybe has something going on with that as well. So I don't know, but
There's still a lot of unknowns regarding what the Department of Homeless Services is going to provide and how it will be provided. And so knowing that the sheriff's office is a complete partner through and through. And so we know there's trust in within that to respond to things as it arises. So I think that's where we're hoping to get the not comfort, but clarity on like, yeah, while they're not necessarily doing some of the more proactive outreach work, when there are public safety concerns or issues about where campsites aren't, that's still an available resource. But the outreach part, understanding should be being done by the Department of Homeland Services in that role, with the sheriff's office providing support and other components to that work, but not the primary. So I think we understand that. It's also it's been the most reliable partner we've had in helping our unhoused individuals. And how is this going to come together over the next several months? I think there's just a lot of interest and concern in that.
Yeah, and I mean, all the deputies, have been able to work with and alongside the Hope team for the past 10 years. So they have the same knowledge that the Hope team does. They're, like you said, not going to be focused on those type of issues, but when they respond to neighborhood concerns or, somebody in crisis, they have the same resources available to them. They know how to handle those people. They know, what they can provide for them and things like that. And posting camps, we will still do that. That part of it's not going away. It's just the dedicated positions are going away.
Yeah, I think like Greg mentioned, I think that just understanding the new process of how things will be handled, I think would be an important thing for us to know, as we're also communicating that with community members, of understanding that engagement and outreach is should be responsibility of other agencies, that are more focused that way. And your all responsibility is more the public safety aspect, which is more, the end result of the service
Yeah,
being offered. And
hopefully there won't be, they shouldn't notice like a decline in service with, if they call, we're still going to come, whether it's somebody on the Hope team or just a patrol deputy. So we're still coming. We're still going to address the issue and do whatever we can for it to help.
Well, that's hopefully, again, for the unhoused community, they're not seeing any difference. And for our other community, they're not seeing a difference. I mean, that's the perfect world.
yeah,
Hopefully, yeah.
But again, it was very public about Hope Team going away. And I think there's just a number of what does that mean? And we've had some conversations, having just a bit of time to talk about that a little more broadly and publicly, I think would just relieve a lot of potential fears or concerns about what's being offered, what help is there available, and what does that mean?
Yeah, definitely.
so much, Chief.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The sergeant farmer or
There's a deputy farmer.
farmer? I spoke with him on the phone about my neighbor
Mhm.
son I told him that this usually happens after dark when he wanders into the park, and there's a white Suburban that parks there, and he gets something from them and wanders into the park. So it's still ongoing. So I don't know if
Okay,
you guys are keeping an eye on that house or not, but it's
there-
always at night.
You should have seen some deputies in the area, maybe, but it would have been late, like graveyard. So after 10 PM. I don't know. I didn't get exactly what time, just after dark. So I don't know if it's right at dark or if you have kind of a time frame. And also,
No time frame on that, just when
Okay.
they show up, but
I know they were looking for that vehicle in that area.
Mhm.
I'm guessing I didn't hear anything about it, so I'm guessing they didn't see it.
yeah, it's not a regular thing, but
Okay.
it's sporadic, but it does come there, so.
Yeah, and if you don't
Said
need
if I
don't go
see it.
chasing after it.
No.
You're able to get a
I can get
plate,
a
let us
license
know.
plate number. Yeah, no, I'm not chasing it. I'm too
Okay.
old.
But if you can get a license plate from, your driveway or something, let us
Yeah,
know.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll move on to review of bills paid. Any question of what's on the agenda or in the staff report?
None for me.
Nope.
Go ahead and approve the consent calendar. Question on the minutes or the licensing? No questions?
I have no questions.
I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
A second.
First and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Then we'll go ahead and move the discussion. Fiscal year 27 APP with Mr. Dirks.
Mr. Dirks. Give me a second. All right, so this is just the draft. We're not looking to adopt or anything, basically based off of our conversation at the retreat back in February. So again, discussing what these items were, making sure we've captured everything for the upcoming year, then answer any questions. Then they'll be brought back at your next meeting for the adoption consideration. Do want to point out a couple years ago, this was essentially redesigned where it used to take about 20% of staff time. We've operationalized a lot of things that have been on the APP for years. So this is designed to take about 10% of staff's time. Some of those things like the fire and public safety take considerably more, but those are larger endeavors and multiple year things. Another thing to point out is some items could fit under multiple goals, but we fit them in the one that fits best. And so there are some areas won't have a specific project for the upcoming year, but that doesn't mean that goal area is not important or that other initiatives aren't already being worked on. So, for example, goal 1, we don't have a specific product, but as you will see, a lot of them could fit in an area that we want a safe, clean, inclusive community. There's just not a very specific task for this. But next, when we talk about police, fire and building services, the regional fire discussions, and then the fire service implementation. So at your next meeting, we'll have a more longer debrief on the work of the East County Fire Service Task Force and where that's at, where we're probably hopefully going to go this summer, and hopefully call it fallish time, October, November, have a recommendation from that group that then we all take back to our respective councils. And, before the end of the calendar year, here's a direction we're marching towards. So from there, then it goes into how do we implement whatever that thing is. So for high quality cost-effective public utilities, parks and events, we have the wetland park development. So we're still refining the final plans right now. We actually had Geotech out yesterday doing the work for the elevated crossings and what kind of footings would be needed. So that should be wrapped up in the next month or two, which then we can send that to the state for permitting, to which then we can get it to bid. So a year from now, it's under construction. We're continuing our sewer inflow and infiltration reduction projects, and actually with additional discussions with Erica in Public Works, probably doing a very comprehensive start at one end of the city with manhole sealing and work our way through all the manholes. Some manholes will need, just a little bit. Some actually need quite a lot, but we're looking at actually targeting all of the manholes systematically in the coming year. We've this current year focused on the Reservoir One booster, what it was, what it wasn't, how it did or didn't function, learned a lot, including how what we thought could work with, using well 4 as potential booster and the things that were done to make that possible, but implementing that in the field, it didn't work. And so there's a lot of other valving that goes along with this, but we're hoping to actually put together a design for that booster in the coming year. It's been about 6 years since we've done an RFP for our on-call engineering service, so that is due. So we'll be doing that. And then we have our CDBG park project, which is finishing the crossing from the new pathway to the new restrooms for an ADA accessible pathway, and then doing a refurb to the ball field itself. So a couple years ago, we did, clean up the fencing and repaired it, added new benches and bleachers. This will actually take care of the infield. For goal 4, for our long-term financial stability and economic vitality, we have how we're going to pay for our regional fire service, and then more RFPs. So not necessarily in priority order, cleaning services is actually the one that may drop off depending on how things work through the year. Nothing quite, it's been a little bit since we've done a cleaning services RFP, but it's fine. But for phones and IT, it's been quite a while since we've done those. And even though there's nothing wrong with the current providers, it is good best practice to just kind of always go out and see what the market has to offer and making sure that we are getting good value for the services. So we'll have those programmed in as well. For goal 5, nothing specific, but again, we're always looking at the education reimbursement program and encouraging people to continue their education in a way that facilitates, a better organization, better community, and then the engineering awards. So always facilitating that, even though it's not a specific initiative in the coming year. We're coming up to the long session for legislative work, and Seth is already well deep into that on heavily into property tax and just kind of overall tax structures in Oregon. Also, a lot of questions around ambulance service plans, ambulance response, manufactured home co-op modeling, all those things we're continuing to push for and advocate. The short session was really focused on the state's budget gaps. So there was no bandwidth for anything else. It's looking like the upcoming one is going to be very full, especially around, again, education funding and other funding mechanisms. So hopefully that also means it's ripe for proper discussions on the overall tax structure of Oregon, but we'll see. Again, not that we're not responsible to our environment, but there wasn't a targeted specific project. The wetland construction could fit under this, obviously, but again, it fit better under the improving the parks one. And then lastly, for our intentional community engagement, the flip side of the regional fire service financing is we have the technical work that shows what kind of funding is needed. And then there's how do we communicate that in a way that's meaningful to our community. There's still wetland park engagement with community planting days, the updated design, opportunities for their involvement with signage. And then the larger work around how we're communicating what we as a city do, what our public safety partners do, and how we're communicating that with the financial needs and the potential future ask for that. So those are the main projects upcoming for the fiscal year. This is a very draft layout. We're still moving some things around to make sure that it's spread through the season, even though some initiatives, especially anything public safety related, is going to cross the whole year. There's some capital things that have to be done in a certain time frame. So this is very much still a draft living piece, but just to show how that lays out. So with that, what questions or concerns do we have?
Questions, comment by the council?
The only comment I have, if it's back to the financial end of it. It appears, and I haven't been close to the conversations, but we have this property tax discussion, and Seth's been working on that for a couple of years. We have that kind of teed up with our legislators to bring that forth fairly quick, don't we? You've been in conversations, Seth, what do you think?
Yeah, we've talked to, last month I've talked to Senator Gorsuch's office and both Rep. Hudson and Rep. Ruiz. We don't have a specific statutory measure other than we might reintroduce the bill that we did in the 2025 session to move that forward, change some of the technical aspects, but we're still pushing on a number of different ways to try and get that moving. And what I've been hearing is that the legislature is interested in some sort of comprehensive tax reform package, whether that's property tax reform, sales tax, something to address the issues that we're continually seem to be facing every second or third biennium, where we're always in crisis. And that's not a way to run a state.
Well, yeah, it's deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
And something that's finally permeating is, when there's talk of economic development, it's mostly in property tax incentives, which come on the backs of cities and schools and special districts, where the state gets to windfall in whether it's the corporate tax or the payroll tax. And there's a lot of pushback now from, again, schools and cities of saying, we can't afford it anymore. State, you have to look at something different than just pushing these programs on us. And so the governor does have I didn't name it, Prosperity Council that's looking at different means and measures to regain, kind of corporate interest in Oregon. And so they're looking again at some different tax things, which again should be looked at comprehensively as the entire system. So we'll see how that flushes out in conjunction with then this upcoming session.
Yeah, well, keep up the work, because it just has to be continual. It's a long haul. And I'm glad that, we've been, and I knew we've been talking to our legislators, but.
And a lot of the work is basic education
Yeah.
for not only the legislature, but for citizens. And that's where the league the league has shifted their focus to. And I've made the point, cities that are considering local option levies or geo bonds or spinning off special districts, explaining the financial situation and what the pain points are and why we're in the situation we're in is the same for every city, school
Oh, yeah.
district and special district in Oregon. We don't all need to go out and hire our own PR firm for that. And they are working on trying to put some materials that together that everyone can use, and then some templates so that cities can customize it for kind of what they want to have. But it's not going to be a legislative fix, but it might be some of the groundwork that needs to happen.
Well, yeah, every agency, every governmental agency is facing this, and it just, keep up the good work is all I'm saying.
Well, and it just came out today, the Oregonian Commission, it was done by HDM Research, so an actual, research firm updating kind of public sentiment in and around the area. And, homelessness still remains a top concern, but what grew was, increasing taxes and inflationary pressures for households, and the distrust of local government grew substantially from last year. So a lot of headwinds to overcome if, governments, whether it's, again, special district, city, county, school district, asking for more money when people we know are stretched thin. And with that level of distrust, that's not good math.
And I think right now there's more willingness of folks to listen to the conversation of, having some comprehensive, conversations of tax reform.
Mhm.
And so, from previous years where people were just shut it down, they're wanting more information. Prime time to get.
It's
things
finally
going.
impacted enough
Yes, especially.
varying entities
Yes.
that it can't be ignored anymore. Okay, well, you'll see that again in 2 weeks, but with the final schedule laid out there.
Go ahead and move on to BOAC presentation.
Mayor, council, we were just talking about with Laura. Items that you seem to beat your head against the wall at year after year that don't. So it's time for an update on BOAC. So this is the Bureau of Emergency Communications. They run the 911 center for the county. They are responsible not only for answering the phone calls, but also making sure that the right resources get dispatched. We've been working on an IGA update since 2019. Sad news, the of Portland, Bob Causey, who used to be the 911 director, when he first got hired, he had a goal of getting the IGA updated before he left. He's leaving at the end of the month, so it won't be done in time for him to go. But I'm actually optimistic that we are moving forward, and we'll be seeing this come in front of you all for an approval by the end of 2026. Cautious optimism. Again, this has been in place since 1995. It's in dire need of an update. Put together a group of folks to look at the primary sticking point has been the cost allocation. The sticking point has been that the county doesn't pay anything for medical services and they get dispatched on over 100,000 calls a year. They're 1/6 of the workload. We went through a whole process to figure out an appropriate allocation between the two functions that 911 does, answering the phones and doing the dispatch. And then we came up with a methodology for how to do that. Here's kind of some statistics on the user agency. User agencies and the amount of calls that are done. This is the simplified graph of what the cost allocation looks like. And really it is the 911 call taking is the biggest portion, and that's still going to be paid under the current methodology. It's the dispatch that we are tying to workload. And for EMS, that came to about 7% of the overall budget for BOAC. They, like I said, their 5-year average was, or the 3-year average was close to 100,000 calls out of 600,000 calls for service. So it's a significant portion of the workload. It's actually bigger than the sheriff's office by about double in terms of workload. So this was proposed. And we took it to the user board. The county asked twice to postpone the vote because they didn't have the people there that they wanted. We did. Ultimately, they also wanted to revisit the cost allocation methodology. We said we're open to that, but there's no point in doing that if we go through this process and the answer for the county is anything higher than what we're paying now is unacceptable. And so we pulled the user board and said, are you guys open to this? And the consensus was if they can answer a question of what's a fair way of doing this and who's going to be responsible for paying the medical dispatch portion before we go into it, then we're willing to. The county was not willing to answer those questions, so we never re-looked at it. And so as part of that, we, under the old IGA, exercised the authority to just change the cost allocation. That vote happened in October of 2025 and was going to go into effect July 1st, 2026. The county said that wasn't enough notice to find money. And so we met with them a couple of times, the city of Portland, Multnomah County, and I, and talked through the issues. And the Portland City Administrator is in charge of BOAC. The user board is an advisory board. And he decided to change what they're paying next year to $1 million rather than the methodology we approved, which would have had them paying an additional $2.4 million. And he felt that that was, the basis for that was that's what Washington County AMR pays in Washington County on kind of a per call or per population basis. So he felt the minimum was that if they're able to pay that there, then they're able to pay that in Multnomah County. You can't claim it's too expensive in one city and pay it in the other. So that is in his proposed budget. Nothing's final until that budget gets passed, and then we'll see if the county decides to pay or says, go ahead and shut us off. We'll see. It was something that came up in the discussions of, point I made was to the Portland, is if you bill the county and they don't pay, that's a problem. But also if you don't make them pay, why would I keep cutting you checks? Because if people don't pay and you still provide the service, we'll sign up for that as well. So it is a big increase in the county's bill in 1 year, but at the same time, the county is about a quarter of the workload of BOAC. They do 55 to 60,000 calls or dispatch for the sheriff's office every year and 100,000 for AMR. And there's some years where they paid less than Wood Village in terms of what that costs them. And so for a city of 5,000, they are the largest entity outside the city of Portland. While again, it's a big increase, it was because the starting number was so small. The other thing that came out of that is the county did express some interest in concerns that we raised about the ambulance service plan areas. They had some concerns that if Portland and East County were split into two separate areas, people might not want us to serve the East County area. We talked to AMR. They reached out after this whole thing started, and they indicated that was probably the other way around. Multnomah County's been the hardest one to work with, and if East County was run more like Washington or Clackamas County, we'd expect to get some good bids on that. So the county left the door open if we want to approach them about getting that. And we're going to continue conversations with AMR on that. and continue. Greg, the mayor and Greg both submitted comments on their consultants' assessment of medical services, which was disappointing in one way because firefighters sucked, 911 dispatchers sucked, and we need to do a better job so that medical services could improve. It's kind of the through line in that. What didn't suck about it was they essentially agreed that, they said response times it's not financially incentivized for AMR to provide faster response times. And essentially made the case that AMR is a medical transport company, not an emergency service provider, which is what we've been saying all along. As part of the fire discussions, we've been pointing out that 80 to 90% of the priority one calls that come through Russian fire response to first. AMR shows up to move the patient after they've been stabilized. And we're continuing to operate as if we're like the IGA. We're operating as if it was in the early 1990s, not in 2026. So they understood some of those concerns, and they said that they were going to make some changes to the 2028 RFP for ambulance services. And so we're going to try and engage with the chair's office on that once we get a new chair and see if we can make some headway on that. Because again, this is not about getting an extra dollars from AMR. It's about the $40 to $50 million it costs for fire service in East County, and how we can, which is mostly medical, and how we can do a better job of addressing that. And working in conjunction with the county rather than having two separate standalone systems to respond to medical calls that don't talk to each other or work together the way that they need to. So that's the update for BOAC. Like I said, some progress, not necessarily where we want it, but the hope is that with the cost allocation speed bump being removed, we can get the IJ rolling forward and start to focus on working with the county to try and figure out how to provide services the way that we wanted to. When the chair came out and we kind of had the 3 city council meeting and talked about, like, the model we have is broken and no one would design it this way. Can we do better? And hopefully we can move that forward. So that's my update.
So the city administrator
Yes.
agreed, submit the $1 million increase. Okay.
Yep.
So that's headway.
That's progress.
Yeah, that's progress.
More progress than we've had in the last 7 years.
Well, for sure. And we're still, now, that isn't really until we see it in writing and we take action to council, that money's not going to be there, but won't be there if they don't show up with it. But the second piece of that, Seth, it's first time I've really heard somebody admit that AMR, they just want to transport. And to publicly say that is an interesting notion in the conversations I've been involved.
If I could kind of maybe nuance that, it wasn't necessarily AMR saying that, it was the county's report commissioned on ambulance response and service that said it's essentially transport only. When we sat down and talked with AMR regional directors, they certainly, as a large company, offer a variety of services. It has become, because of various things that the county has as standards, become like, no, we have to focus on essentially transport only because of other system issues. They can be a very positive partner, especially in the lower acuity medical calls, of being a partner to respond to those differently, whether it's a nurse navigator, some kind of social worker, being partners in, you don't need to go to the hospital, you just need to go to an urgent care. We'll send you an Uber, for example, because it's cheaper to do it that way than to send, again, 2 paramedics or a paramedic EMT and, an ambulance to something that doesn't need it. The unfortunate side of that is the county is very prescriptive in how you do what you do. That is based essentially on 1990 kind of thinking. even the fact that there's kind of an agreement right now between AMR and the county to, you know, because of the response time issues, they're allowed to pilot things, but it has to receive like commission approval before they can pilot anything. So there's still a lot of barriers to do things that are essentially being done all around the country, just not here. They're even being done one county over, just
Yeah.
not here.
Absolutely, and has for a long time. So, well, we can get $1 million.
Well, I think
Well, the $1
again,
million isn't for us.
Oh, I understand that. I fully understand that.
but I think again, I think this is the moment where again, the push has pushed harder because of the collective group on the user board and conversations that has been had and identifying that this no longer works. I mean, it didn't work 10 years ago. It no longer works now because of where we're at with all these costs and other, counties getting a better deal out of it than we are, just because for whatever reason, the current contract holder does not want to change for the better. And so I think, right now is the prime opportunity for all. I know Seth has been working really hard on this and, we've been trying to ruffle as many feathers as we can to get attention on this because it's not just a Wood Village problem. It's a county problem, but it's specifically East County. So this conversation has, as you talked about it, been happening since you were the mayor and we're continuing to have those conversations. So it hasn't been easy. So.
Well, I mean, I see it as making headway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
inches, this game of inches.
I promised
There.
another 7 years go by
Yeah.
before,
You just-
before
Don't promise things you can't necessarily deliver.
you keep working on that cost allocation.
Any other questions on the BOAC update?
But good work, Seth. I mean, it's hard work and you just gotta stay at it.
Yep. Stay on it.
All right, that was our last big agenda item. Is there a city attorney report?
Good evening, council, mayor. Yeah, I have been promising for a couple meetings now that I would provide some updates on a few of the bills that I was watching during the 2026 short session. So I thought I would take this time to do that. This won't be extensive or long. There are just a handful that I thought might be interesting, general applicability to cities. So I'll dive in. Most of these are good news. There was a bill HB 4148 about transient lodging tax allocation. And that bill is going to provide cities with more flexibility in the way that they spend that revenue. So what that bill actually does is to amend the transient lodging tax allocation statute to increase the percentage of TLT revenue that can be used for funding city services from 30% to 50%. And then on the other side of that, the percentage of TLT revenue that is required to be used for funding tourism or financing, refinancing of debt of tourism related facilities is decreased from 70% to 50%. So there's more flexibility there to fund city services with the TLT is the bottom line. There is also built into that bill the ability to use TLT to fund some resiliency grants for small businesses in the restaurant or lodging industry, but there's not a lot of detail about what a resiliency grant means or what that would look like. So maybe we'll get more guidance on that forthcoming, but I just want to note it for now. Also imposes some new reporting requirements. Like I think it's every 2 years on the odd numbered year. Cities are going to have to detail TLT rates and the amount of revenue collected and then information about how it was spent. So I guess there's the catch with the increased flexibility in spending. Another good news, there is Senate Bill 1585. And that one is specifically good for small cities because what that does is to cap the matching fund requirements for certain state grants to small cities for specific capital improvement projects on specific grants. And it requires also that incorporated cities with a population of fewer than 20,000 people have to be allowed to use grant money awarded for capital construction and municipal infrastructure projects for all phases of a funded project, instead of being limited to, like, say, engineering or just planning and support or just construction. And it's sort of a sliding scale for what your cap is for matching funds under these particular grants that the statute applies to. But basically the summary is, the smaller your city, the smaller your matching grant requirement will be. So for the types of grants that this applies to, for a population, city with a population of 5,000 or fewer, it would be 3% of the grant award of 100,000 or less. And then if the grant award is over 100,000, it's just 5%. So that's kind of nice, because it eases the burden sometimes that those matching requirements come with when you get a grant. And then the other handful of bills that I was watching have to do with government ethics. And there were 4 of them that I was looking at. 3 of them passed, 1 didn't. So I'll talk about the ones that did pass first. Number 1, there has been you may remember, we call it the hot dog opinion colloquially, but OGEC put out an opinion, I think it was last summer now, that basically said more or less that they would interpret ORS 244-040, which is one of the ethics rules, to conclude that food and beverages that a public body provides to its own elected officials and employees could be an impermissible financial gain under that ethics statute, unless it was treated as compensation or equally offered to the public. And so that would mean potentially things like, if you wanted to have snacks at a really long meeting, for example, you wouldn't be able to do that unless those snacks were baked into compensation or also made equally accessible to the public. In this statute, or this bill, actually, HB 4161 went ahead and fixed that opinion to allow food and beverages at official events, and also to allow limited agency merchandise for officials up to $100 per calendar year. So that could look like things like branded clothing, plaques or recognition items, other small things that might be tied to an official's role. So that was helpful. Another one of the bills had to do with who sits on the OGEC commission and puts out these opinions. So there was a bill passed to say that at least one of the governor's appointees to the OGEC board has to have local government experience. And I think that just will be really helpful in providing a voice to the commission on how local governments and councils and boards and other governing bodies actually do their work. And then I think I said there were 4 that I was watching. It's actually 3. The 4th one, and the one that didn't pass, had to do with serial meetings. And this bill was, there's been some recent confusion, I think, because of recent OGEC rules and also trainings and question and answers that OGEC has put out about serial meetings. And I guess the upshot is that OGEC is taking a pretty broad view of what qualifies as a serial meeting, the types of activities that count as deliberation that could be considered a meeting that could then lead to a serial meeting. And that included things like fact gathering, just really, really broad view of what could fall within serial meetings, even to the point that communications with constituents and media, if one constituent or one media member talks to too many people on the council, quorum about a certain thing, that could be considered a serial meeting potentially, under some of the confusing guidance that OGRC has been giving. So this bill was introduced. It was Senate Bill 5177. Basically just looking to clean that up and to 4177, sorry, looking to clean that up and just make it more clear what is and isn't considered a deliberation or use of an intermediary like a constituent or member of the media for purposes of the serial meetings law. The bill did pass, the governor vetoed it. And I think that's because there was a lot of pressure on her to do so from media outlets. But she has, in her veto letter, did send everyone back to the board to draw up a new, more workable bill, whatever that looks like for the upcoming session. So I think we'll see that in 2027 and keep an eye on it. But that's an important one, obviously, just for practicalities of how cities and councils do business. So yeah, like I said, we'll keep an eye on that one in 2027, and that's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions?
No.
We appreciate you keeping an eye on those and informing them when they are both positive and impactful in other ways. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. We have, on for the mayor and councilor comments, so I got this email from Commissioner Burns Edwards, and it seems that they're looking to introduce this in an upcoming council meeting, or commission meeting. And so I wanted to present it to the council as just information. There's really, it's just more information based. There's no discussion or delivery unless you guys want have comments on it. But I just wanted to share this, that they've asked us to kind of sign off on this. But I wanted to present it to the council before forward on any.
Yeah, and the crux of it is that currently, right now, apparently there aren't regulations that monitor the mobile needle exchange programs. And I guess some have been very close proximity to other schools and things. So this would prohibit those mobile programs from doing that work within 1,000 feet of a school. Unless, there's written explicit permission, extenuating circumstances, for that, et cetera. But the crux is, mobile needle exchange programs within 1,000 feet of a school. I kind of was shocked there wasn't already that in place.
She did also provide two dates. I think their first reading is later this month. Following reading, I think deliberation after that, obviously. And so I can provide those dates if council wants to provide any additional comments.
My comment right now, because I've been tracking this a little bit, is I don't know why the state of Oregon booted this one and did not take action on it, because it was on the floor for the entire state. So I appreciate our county commissioners moving it forward. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, I'm certainly happy to respond to Commissioner Brim Edwards and say, Wood Village Council, supports the county's work in this area.
Yeah, and then, even I can reach out to our commissioner and just kind of, let him know that we are in favor of this. If, again, it's something that he should consider as well, as folks as part of his district. So that was mine. And then Greg, did you want to share about this real quick?
Thank you.
So tomorrow is the budget hearing for the county commissioners proposed budget, and this one will be happening here in East County at Mount Hood Community College. And Greg has submitted for public testimony for that.
Yeah, so I've submitted for public testimony. I'm on the slate, not sure what time I'm on, but I was told expect less than 2 minutes per person. And so I've crafted what I wanted to say that I'm pretty sure I can get in under 2 minutes, but certainly since I'm representing, the city of Wood Village and our, kind of collective ideals, just wanted to run this past you all to make sure within the constraint of, figure a minute, 30 seconds, I've hit at least the key areas, which again, it's appreciation to the sheriff's office for, doing what they can in a difficult budget time. And I really, really, really struggled still being positive with the Department of Homeless Services. But through talking with Commissioner Jones-Dixon's office, some of his people, and letting it marinate a little bit, came up with a strategy of just, instead of having such a programmatic budget where, again, these are the things we're going to do, the end, let's build in flexibility. There is a brand new director at the Homeless Services Department who may have new ideas. There's certainly, impacts to the East County cities, Gresham, the 3 cities, that we're always not in alignment, and a lot of transitions and different things happening, in Portland itself. And so it seemed to make sense to build in flexibility and how those dollars are used to meet communities' needs. So that's what I'm advocating for. So instead of doing what I wanted to do, I'm still trying to provide a positive solution that still, trying to brings all of our partners together. So just wanted to run this past you all to see, is this reasonable to spat out in a minute 30?
And again, Greg mentioned something that is key, with transition and leadership position, there's always an opportunity for innovative opportunities. And so I think that's really where, him and I have had conversation of potential options. And so, hopefully with new leadership, it lends itself for opportunities that would best serve our community out here.
And at least, in a few interviews, I haven't met him yet, but the director, Nathaniel, has at least acknowledged other cities exist outside Portland and their needs may be different than what Portland needs. So, let's build on that.
I think flexibility approach.
Yeah.
Let's forget the fact he's the 3rd director since 2022, and there's been 3 other interim directors for a year. Ignore that. Let's focus on the future.
Did you say that the county commission meeting is out here?
So they're holding 2 listening sessions. They held one late April at the county building. Then they're holding one tomorrow at Mount Hood Community College, where I signed up like the day that opened.
Well, that in itself, to me, is an improvement with the county
Mhm.
to get out of that Portland office and come out and see these.
I would say to the credit,
Yes.
looking at what the chair's done, how the process used to be, where it was essentially the chair's budget, and then there was this mad dash to make any kind of tweaks to it. This is more of an open, here's what I'm proposing, and there's kind of this period to make larger adjustments before it goes into that formal process. This is part of that process. So again, it's a game of inches, and this is a nice step.
I think with being kind, I think it's timing.
Yeah.
And decisions of why it's done this way. I think if other decisions or choices would have happened, I don't think it would have been done in this manner, but we'll take it.
So we'll take advantage of the
And
opportunity
we'll
provided,
provide our 2 cents.
regardless of the reasons behind
Yes,
them.
yes,
So thanks for that. Then I have one more thing before we go into executive session, and that is, so the Pure Company, which is a county-provided contractor for homeless services in our region. Be very careful, I want to say this. The county recently gave them money to provide enhanced services in the 3 cities, which is nice. The downside is the Pure Company was just made aware of this, and it has to be all spent by June 30. So your company, doing what they can with those constraints, said, hey, we'd love to have a space to weekly from 11 to 3, have a space like a pop-up where people can get, housing support, meals, bus tickets, kind of like a pop-up service center. They asked, could our park here be that site? And I said, well, this kind of goes beyond me to do that because there's a lot to unpack with this. In in theory, being part of a solution is great. And if this is would part of a larger thought out initiative effort, maybe let's have those conversations. Given the fact that essentially the county just dumped the money on a peer company to say, look, we're doing something in East County, and there's no exit strategy past July 1, and given all the other potential budget cuts after July 1, doesn't give a lot of confidence that if people start getting used to coming here, then services one day are just gone. What does that mean for them? What does that mean for us in our community? So I wasn't really inclined to say yes to this for those reasons, not because I don't believe in it's, pop up and going, go where the homeless are, the unhoused are, and offer, these services, without necessarily a brick and mortar shop. That's great. And there probably is a space for us to exist in that as part of a larger plan and strategy. That doesn't exist here. I brought this up with the mayor and we thought, well, maybe we can work with, again, where are the unhoused? Where are they? They're not really here. They come here, restroom, rest, whatnot, but they're not here. Go where they are, and maybe helping the peer company say, here's some places maybe that could be a little more successful to meet them where they are. There was also a thought, because they said something that can be done is meals. Through Play East, we do the summer meals in the park and we never turn anyone away. Yes, targeted at school-age kids and families, but we never turn anyone away. And now with Reynolds not having summer learning, that was the meal provider, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. Is there a meal program to be had, in partnership with the school district this year? So a thought is, can we maybe use some of the money from Peer Company to continue our summer meal program as branded and promoted as we always have? So we're not just saying, meals for the unhoused, but this is the summer lunch program at the park through Play East. And then using the other funds to offer those other services at a different spot, potentially even Play East going, okay, Peer Company, about how many people do you get? We'll bring the lunches to you. So you're still one-stop shop for holistic services. And we're also providing these things to, again, kind of the broader community in need, et cetera. So that was the approach I think I want to take. I don't like closing a door saying no without maybe some other options and alternatives, but certainly wanted to take this one before you all.
Yeah, and as Greg mentioned, our idea is not to say no to resources that we know are needed, but figure out a way where we can best serve who it is intended to. So work with the peer company to identify where, like they always say, meet the community where they're at. Obviously, they're not always here. Doesn't mean they don't come through here, but where are they at and how can we assist them to identify that location is really the primary goal that we are hoping that we can do.
I think the Hopes team's success has been that they've gone out to where they are at and not rely on them. And I think it's wise to not set up a booth here that in a month it's gone. All that does is continue to reinforce to the houseless people that, there's nothing that's real. It all is smoke and mirrors. So I think it's wise to be cautious of doing that. If we could get them as you're talking, then that'd be wonderful. I'm surprised that, I know they got to spend whatever it is, how much money, and they got, somehow they didn't know they were supposed to be out here, whatever else happened.
So the peer company has been out here, but the individual seemed just as kind of surprised and almost again disappointed that essentially the county dumped this on us to show we're doing something out here and gave us a month to do something that then ends. Like he was equally disturbed about this because again, they do the work. They're with the unhoused community a lot. A lot of them themselves formerly had been unhoused. So they get it.
However it happened, I'm glad that they want to try to spend that money.
Yeah.
And if we can just get them, funneled in the direction that it's most
effective
right now in people's hands somehow.
Because that's, again, like you mentioned, the biggest fear is that they pop something up here and folks just continue to assume that resource is here when it's actually.
And we know it's not, and that doesn't seem right.
When they say East County,
I mean, they're talking about all 4 cities.
It's the 3 cities.
Three
It's Wood Village, Fairview, Troutdale, potentially like unincorporated Troutdale, just to the east, like, 1,000 acres area. Gresham has its own thing that tends to actually work relatively well.
And the city, sorry, but,
Oh.
and the city of Gresham's kind of not interested in expanding their current
Well,
services.
and part of, again, why not do something in Gresham? Because then it causes confusion
Yeah, right.
for their team of,
Exactly.
well, I just talked to so-and-so and they offered this. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're like. Yeah. Again, I'm not as familiar with, the program, but, you look at the results and there are real results and you hear positive things coming from their community about how they run their program. And for those that get services from their programs, you don't always get the same from talking about people who experience county offered programs. And that's not to say that the individual contractors like Peer Company cultivate amazing work, good people. I think it's just the broader machine of the county that bungles the works.
I almost feel like having something in our space kind of, we kind of own it, even though.
Well, because then and that was another concern. It's like, okay, come then that first Tuesday in July, it's people are here. Then they come here and say, where's your stuff? And like, well, that was never us. It was almost like we had when we were partnering on the vaccine drives during COVID times, and there's some miscommunication with the provider. People were mad at us.
Yeah, it does come back to us.
And I don't think any of us mind being partners in thoughtfully designed, structured works. That's not what this is. And it's not the Pierce Company fault. I want to make that very clear. They're trying to do what they can with what was dropped on them.
So
No.
is there kind of a
Sounds like
consensus?
great. Let's find a way to work with Peer Company to get the resources out there. It's just this isn't the right space to do that.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I would agree with that.
That's what I thought. I also didn't want to make that decision unilaterally.
Well, thank you, Greg, for presenting that. And